world where achievements and accolades motivate us to do more and be more, we're often left wondering, is this really it?
Deep inside, you know there is more to life. You're ready to leave behind the old, push your way through, and claim the deeper life that's calling you.
That's where we excel.
We're your hosts, Stephanie Allen.
And Maren Oslak.
And this is the Soulful Leader Podcast.
Sit back and relax as we share the shortcuts we've uncovered to help you make shift happen. Welcome to the Soulful Leader Podcast. This is Maren, and I'm here with Stephanie. And this last week of January, I would imagine many of you are also where I am, where you might have set some goals or some New Year's resolutions, and you're kind of feeling itchy about them, either because they're not quite right, they don't fit for you anymore, and you're thinking, maybe I should keep going, maybe I shouldn't, or maybe you've stopped altogether. And in our push through world, we're really taught to keep going regardless, no matter what. And I think one of the things that Stephanie and I wanted to talk about today is would it look like to stop and reevaluate that and really be in the conversation with our lives and with our goals, instead of I set the goal, I have to see it through at all costs. So as you guys are looking at your goals, yesterday I watched this wonderful video. It's a TED Talk, and I will link the TED Talk into the show notes because I don't remember the title of it right now. But this wonderful economist was talking about presencing your future selves and how our present self, because we're right here, right now, is kind of going to win that battle, right? When we think about what we want for our future, it's hard to imagine. It's not as tangible as what's right in front of us. And he illustrates kind of his findings using the story of Odysseus. Odysseus was a ship captain, and he was taking his ship full of sailors home after winning a battle. And they were sailing past the sirens, who are these women who sing this song. And the song is so beautiful that nobody could resist it. And every ship that sails past the sirens, these beautiful women sing their song, and they get drawn into the cliffs, and they basically crash into the cliffs. So Odysseus had this great idea that he was going to have his sailors, all of his first mate and all the sailors, put wax in their ears so that they couldn't hear the song, but Odysseus wanted to hear it. So he was going to have them lash him to the mast, and then they were going to sail past. And he said, no matter what, don't untie me. No matter I kick and scream, do whatever, don't untie me. I'm going to sail past. We're going to sail past, and you'll have the wax in your ears, so you won't be able to hear it, and I'll be able to hear the song, and we'll all make it through safely. And I loved this guy in his TED Talk, because he very humorously said, why wouldn't you do a dry run on that? You're about to basically put an entire ship full of people at risk so that you can hear a song. And why wouldn't you do a dry run on that? And I think about that with our goals and where we're going in our lives, and especially as leaders, because how often do we have this goal and it's a shiny new thing, or maybe a shiny old thing, and we're like, oh, I really want that. We haven't thought about it for two things I think about. One of them, we haven't thought about it from our future selves. Is that something really in alignment with where I want to go? Using the Odysseus of, like, he wants to hear the siren right now in this present moment, but maybe he actually wants to, like, grow old and die and at some point have kids and have a wife, and right, maybe those are at odds with each other. So there's that aspect of it. And the other aspect of it is that when there's something that important at risk, an entire ship full of people, why not do a prototype? Do a couple of dry runs. See what's is this something that's really going to work or not? Or maybe we need to go in a different direction with it.
I think sometimes, we say we want something, but we don't ask why.
Mm.
Why do I want that? Is it my ego that wants that? Is it my outer manifestation of what people say I'm successful? The accolades? Or is it something that really your soul is longing for? Or and there's an old saying, whatever you're longing for is also longing for you.
Mm.
So if you're longing for that, why is that? And is it because somewhere in your future you already have it? Which another little saying I've heard too is that you have to let go of who you are if you want to become who you want to become, because you're not the same person. So
So
our
when you say somewhere in your future you already have it, talk to me
mm,
about that.
so whatever it is that you, maybe it's a goal, maybe it's a dream, um, maybe it's a way of being. It captures you and your attention because somewhere in your future you're living it. There's many different futures that we can have, right? Like if I take this choice, it's going to lead me to that. I mean, it's cause and effect, right? If I take this choice, it's going to lead me to there. If I do this, it's going to lead me to somewhere else. And that's cause and effect. But there are multiple possibilities for your future. So if you captured a dream or an idea or a goal, that's why it's also important to say, why? Why is this important? And to do a dry run to kind of feel it out first. Like, is this where I want to? It's going to feel uncomfortable because you
Mm.
haven't been there before. And we've talked about that with the comfort zone. It's like we need to step outside of our comfort zone if we actually want to grow, which means we have to let go of our comfort zone. We have to let go of who we think we are.
Right.
So all these things that we get attached to, well, I'm this type of person. I'm that type of leader. I'm this type of whatever. I believe in this kind of a world. Well, is it true? How do you like you're going to have to let that go if you want to venture into a whole new world. So there is that battle between the future self and the present self. We if we keep going by our present self, and it's important for us to be present. See, that's a different thing. See, the present self is moving. It's changing all the time. It's like a river.
So I think that the challenge is that we can remember our past, right? And we predict our future based on our past.
Right.
It's hard to imagine the future. So it's hard to create our present moment from that future. So if you can imagine, right?
Mm,
If we're building our future based on our past, then we will always be limited to what's behind us.
mhm.
If instead we live into the dream that Stephanie mentioned of there's multiple possibilities for our future. And if we can use our imaginations to step into that, now our present self can make a different choice. And that's what you were saying, Stephanie, of like becoming someone different, being different, a different person who makes different choices.
Mhm.
And I, for me, one of the easiest ways to do that is to step into my future self and say, what choice would she make? Because now I'm
Yeah.
using my imagination.
Yeah, and getting to know that future self, like that being having a practice to be present to the future that wants to happen. I keep using that one, but it's like the butterfly, right? The butterfly and the caterpillar. The caterpillar does not remember ever having the intelligence that it's meant to become a butterfly. It's forgotten. But it
Yeah.
remembers crawling around the ground and eating all kinds of things. It remembers being a caterpillar.
And it can't imagine what it's like to fly or flap its wings or even have that different perspective. It has a single perspective. That's its life.
Yeah.
This is who I am.
Like it lives in a whole new world, the butterfly does, than a caterpillar.
Yeah.
And essentially, when we're making goals or we're having dreams or ideals, we are asking for ourselves to step into a whole new world, but we have to let go of the caterpillar. We have to let go of who we think we are. And that's uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable because we're
Yeah.
really identified with it, right? And
Well, and the thing is that the process that the caterpillar and the butterfly or the butterfly goes through, the two of them, is that in the chrysalis, imagine literally, they're called imaginal cells. Imaginal cells start to pop up, and the caterpillar's defense system actually tries to kill them because it's like, that's not me. That's our identity, right? That's what we do when we have this big dream or a big goal or a big thing to do at work is we either identify with it and say, oh, that's me, I can do that. Or we don't identify with it. Nope, not me. Can't do that. Not who I am. And that's where the caterpillar is in its chrysalis. Eventually, the imaginal cells form a disc that are stronger than the defense system of the caterpillar. And now the transformation happens into the butterfly because the imagination becomes greater than the past identity.
mhm. And I think what's needed is that time of just being
Yeah.
still, not reacting from an old pattern, an old way. And this is what I mean by soulful leaders. Soulful leaders have got a way to just be present, not giving up or giving in, but just literally being still, of going, okay, if I react how I have always react, it's just going to keep on keeping on. It's going to keep on doing the same stuff. And I'm bringing this up because working with a few of my clients this past week, they've asked for something they've wanted. And sometimes we have to ask ourselves, okay, you say you want X, Y, or Z. But what happens if X, Y, or Z actually shows up? Are
Hmm.
you do you are you have you practiced in a way of being present to it? Because most of the times we just push things away. So being soulful is like saying, "Hey, I want." We're looking for a state of being. We have to presence that butterfly. It's different, so we need to practice getting to know that butterfly
Hmm.
and not trying to be annihilating all the things that are coming in. Another great line is like, sometimes when you think things are falling apart, they may be falling into place. That's true of the butterfly and the caterpillar too.
Hmm.
So to really, the difference between reactivity is to be responsible, to be able to respond. And you can't respond from an old way of doing. You have to respond from your future. What would your future self, if your future self that's living the dream, the ideal, is how would that self respond to this moment right now? How would they embrace it? What guidance would it give me? I think that's a different soulful question.
That is. And you mentioned that I almost think of it as a sacred pause that soulful leaders have of being able to stop and make space for the future possibility. Or in the past, we've talked about conflict of like holding the tension of the two opposites, because when you can hold that tension between the two, a new a new possibility can emerge from that. When we swing to it's either this way or that way. It's either,
Mhm.
you know, I think about the caterpillar in the cocoon, the actual that's the process is this sacred space is there. And there literally is a battle going on between I want to keep and stay who I am, even though that looks really beautiful over there. I'd like that. And it becomes a battle between the future self and the past self. And that's the present moment. This is the now. And that's where all any change happens in the now.
Mhm.
So in any given moment, are you making a choice from the limited past self or the unlimited potentiality of the future self?
Yeah, are you making a decision from the familiar Or have you stepped into the unknown and made a relationship with that unknown that is loving, that you're saying, okay, what wants to happen?
I love the word you just used. Have you created a relationship with the unknown, the relationship? Because oftentimes when I hear people talk, I'm like, yeah, just do that. Yeah,
Mhm.
just present your future self, right? As if it's a one and done.
Yeah.
So can you speak more to that relationship piece?
Hmm. Yeah, the relationship piece is a real important. I think it's like almost I have to leave my body, meaning, that I'm present, but I'm looking at it from a different perspective. I tend to project my life when something is going on in my life that I am in a complete unknown. I don't know what's happening. I imagine that I'm sitting in a movie theater and I'm watching a scene play out on a big screen, and that everyone in that screen, and this is important, is not my enemy. It's actually all parts of me. So whatever I'm in relationship with, whether it's another human being, whether it's my taxes, whether it's a system, nature, whatever it might be, I see it also as myself. So I see myself as the director sitting in the seat in the audience watching
Mm.
it and
So
being able to
watching all the
retake.
actors go
Yeah.
by. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, I can kind of play it out in my imagination of like, okay, so if I had the player or the actor Stephanie act this way, what might the happen or what might unfold? Or if I had her embody this way, what might unfold? Or like I'll play things out. I'll try different things on. And there's no right or wrong or good or bad, but it allows me to start to make the unfamiliar familiar.
Mm. And be
So
in choice. I mean,
yeah,
imagine all the choices that might come up there. And it's like, oh, instead of oftentimes we don't like feel like we're in choice.
right. And you've got to slow it down enough to be able to make some space to then choose. When someone's having a reactive moment, it often is revealing what they're believing. So here's an example. If someone accuses you of something, they might be right. They might be right. It might be, and I will take that. I'm like, perhaps this person is accusing me of something that I didn't even see. I'm going to go and look at that because I care and I want to grow and I want to learn. To me, that's soulful. So I'm like, yeah, you might be right. And I'm going to look at that and thank you for making that obvious. But I also reveals to me where they might be coming from too. So to ask a question to them, if it's safe or not, or whatever, or to yourself of saying, what are you believing about this situation? If they are coming from their caterpillar world of pain and suffering or betrayal, no kidding, they're going to have that kind of belief system. They're going to project that out onto me. And that may or may not even be true. So to be able to slow down enough to say, what are you believing? And can we look at this together? But I cannot do that for someone else if I haven't done it for myself. That's why I bring myself back to the movie theater, put myself in the seat, and I watch what's going on. What is that Stephanie on the screen believing that is then orchestrating all of these other players to respond or react this way? And if I can change how Stephanie's thinking or believing from a different paradigm and try, I will respond or I will react differently and I will behave. I will have different sets of behaviors that will then shift the whole scene. So it's something to play out in your mind and in your heart. So when we look at the goals and the New Year's resolutions and the things that we want to do, coming back to that, I think there's a lot of shame of like when we don't get them. And
Mm.
then you can go in and say, well, what is the state? Why do I say I want, why do I say I want to like increase my bottom line by, 20%? Or why do I want to have a really skillful team that's working well together, or a great culture? Like you may not have gotten really clear about why that's important. And when you can get really clear about why that's important, then you can say there's a state that is needed. So if you say, I really want my bottom line, or if you're doing, hey, I want to save more money for my retirement, I want to be, the state you're seeking is more security, is more um, maybe freedom or choice. How might I then embody freedom and choice in this moment? How might I act that differently? So you're bringing the future to the now, which means you're going to have to let go of your past.
Mm.
I used to use a saying, it's like you have to let go of first base in order to steal second. You have to take your foot off
Absolutely.
first. You have to let go. And that is the great unknown. And if you have a relationship, like, coming back to what that question was, if you have a relationship with the unknown, that it's scary and that it's painful, you're never going to let go. You're never going to let go of that first space. So, what has to happen for you to build a more beautiful relationship with the unknown? What do you need to believe or tell yourself? And those are the states that you need to practice so that you can handle the unknown when it comes to you from a different place within yourself, more soulfully.
I think the other piece of that, when I hear relationship, is that there is a practice and that we don't expect ourselves to be perfect at it the first time. And when you say, about you have to take your foot off of first in order to steal second, well, you know what? You also have to have practiced doing that over and over and over. And
Mhm.
had it gone wrong 90% of the time, right? Like it
Right,
just,
that's right.
and that takes us back to the story of Odysseus of why wouldn't you practice that? Let's do a bunch of dry runs. Let's spend this evening actually practicing what it looks like for you to not untie me and all the different ways I could manipulate you into untying me, right? And so when we think of presencing our future selves, it involves imagination. And I love the exercise that you do in sitting yourself as a director, watching your life go by in the theater, because guess what? That's imagination. So everything that we can do, it's so interesting because as kids, we're told to be realistic. Stop daydreaming. Don't think don't imagine that. Like all the stuff. And so we shove this skill that we have, this essential life skill, and we squash it. And so, as adults, and I think especially as leaders, how how do we get that back? How do we start practicing that again and find the value in it? One of the ways I'm going to give you all permission out there to look at this, and you may have heard me say this before on the podcast, is Einstein, one of the greatest minds of our century, said imagination is more important than knowledge. It's just we don't give it its due.
And we're in a culture that is desperately needing a beautiful imagination.
Absolutely. And it will
Mhm.
change. That is what will change your life, is stepping into that imaginary future and connecting to, as you said, Stephanie, the person that you need to be in this moment. The skill, not the there is this exercise that's very popular right now, which I love that it's popular. It's called the 5 whys. So, I want a Lamborghini. Why? Because I want to drive fast. Why? Because I really like the adrenaline rush. Why? Well, because I need that in my life. My life is so safe. Why? Because I avoid things that are scary. Why? So you keep peeling the layers and you can see that it gets more and more vulnerable and more towards the core of what's important and who I want to be. And that person that I was just pretending to be, you know what? They really needed to know that they were loved and feel that
There's that state, right?
exactly. So we
So go
peel
to
it
the
back,
future
get
of
to the
where you're already loved.
exactly. And now, when you set that goal to have a Lamborghini, you know that it's not just the outer of, I want the Lamborghini. Guess what? All of those layers that you just peeled in those 5 questions, all of that crap's going to come up between you and getting that Lamborghini. So, why not in this
Mhm.
moment embody that and be like, oh, that's what I need to work with?
And sometimes what happens is if you go to the state of being loved, in this case, your example, you won't need the Lamborghini.
It does change.
It
And
changes,
that's
or you'll have the Lamborghini like, it's not really bringing me love.
right. Or it'll just appear on your driveway. Like, I
Right.
mean, like craziness of somebody, a friend of yours got one and it appeared on your driveway and you get to drive it whenever you want. Who knows? I mean, like that's
Things
where the
happen.
magic,
Yeah.
the absolute magic, instead of the trudge, I have to make this happen. This is what invites the magic in our lives. So as you all are playing with your goals right now at the end of January and feeling like, oh, I didn't and I couldn't and maybe I should and all of the stuff, maybe invite yourself into a sacred space of, why did I set that goal? Ask the 5 whys. Maybe sit yourself in a theater watching your present and past and future self go by and make some different choices from a different place in your life. Thanks so much for listening to us today on the Soulful Leader podcast. Remember, you can find us on LinkedIn and on Facebook at the Soulful Leaders, and you can watch us on YouTube also at the Soulful Leaders. We'll see you all next week on the Soulful Leader podcast.
And that wraps up another episode of the Soulful Leader podcast with your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren Oslack. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to dive deeper, head over to our website at thesoulfulleaderpodcast.com.
Until next time.